Hello everybody and welcome to DailyME episode 14. In today's video I'm going to show you how I finish this snakewood marking knife. Let's get going. So when choosing a finish for these marking knives, I had three pieces of criteria I wanted to hit. I wanted it to be durable, easy to apply, and obviously look nice. And this is what I settled for. So the first coat I apply is this cellulose sanding sealer. This is basically a lacquer, but it's very easy to sand. And this gives it a nice durable base coat to start building the finishes on afterward. I then apply a layer of friction polish. This gives it the lovely gloss finish that you may have seen on a finished knife. And then after that, I sort of polish up the ferrule, which I'll show you later, and we finish that up with a coat of microcrystalline wax, which gets covered over the handle and the ferrule itself to protect both the wood and the metal. And the great thing about this finish is you can apply it to all manner of small objects on the lathe. For example, in this case, I'm doing it on a marking knife, but a pen would be a great project that you could apply this finish to. And so before we get started, on the finished marking knives, I put this little thumb recess in there to make it easier to hold. Now this is something that isn't pre-cut before doing the first layer of finish because I have to apply the friction polish while on the lathe. And if I cut this first and I've got that thumb hold spinning round on the lathe, it just gets really messy in there and it's difficult to get a good finish. And so we put the cellulose sanding sealer on first, then the friction polish, then cut this, and then do the wax over that. So you'll see that process now. Let's get started with the sanding sealer. Then after 5 minutes, give that a quick scrub down with 600 grit just to take off any potential track marks. And then we'll get the second coat applied. Okay, so that marking knife has sat there for the past hour or so. Obviously, normally I would do this in batches. I wouldn't watch one dry for a full hour before replacing it with the next one. Get one on there, finish it, put it on there, replace it with the next one, and so on and so forth, basically. But now that friction polish is now dry, we can get cutting the thumb hold. Now, a few people have been asking how I do this. I do it on the spindle sander, or bobbin sander, whatever. And so the challenge here is cutting the thumb recess at 90 degrees to the blade slot. It's all very well trying to eyeball it, but when trying to do that before, I just couldn't get it right. And so that's where this beautiful looking jig comes in. All you do is you put a shim into the blade slot. That then slots into a cut up here. And get it in like that. And then this ramp basically just holds it at pretty much 90 degrees, or flat, should I say, to the table below. And you've got access to start cutting the thumb hold. And I mean, from this point, it's very much a eyeballing process, but I've had pretty good results from this so far. And so after it comes off the bobbin sander, I'll just give it a little bit of a scrub with 240 grit, and that's it. Obviously a layer of wax will go over this afterwards, but I don't bother doing the cellulose sanding sealer or the friction polish because at the end of the day, it's the rest of the knife that's going to be subject to the wear. This thing's going to be rolling around on benches and stuff like that, whereas the thumb recess, because it's scooped away, The only bit of interaction it's actually going to get is from the user's thumb, which actually isn't going to be too high wear. So I'm not worried about building up the finish in that area. I'm not worried about taking it to a 600 grit finish. Just straight off the bobbin sander, a little bit of 240 is absolutely fine for that. And so after giving that recess a quick sand, the next step is to start cleaning up the ferrule. And this is the point where we remove any tarnishing, any excess epoxy that didn't chip off when doing the wood turning, and just get it looking nice, essentially. And I do this with a satin mop. I have played around with varying levels of polishness, glossiness over the past few batches, but to be honest, I always go back to the nice satin mop. I find that highly polished surfaces using steel bright and other such compounds, the highly polished surface just shows up too many imperfections and in my opinion looks a little bit tacky. I prefer to have that kind of matte shine left over, and it gets it looking nice and neat. And to make sure I don't damage the handle when doing this, because obviously we got that nice friction polish finish on there now, I wrap it in a little bit of low tack masking tape. And it's important I use low tack here because I don't want any of that sticky residue left over from normal masking tape. This stuff works brilliantly. And so there it is before, looking a little bit minging. Ugh. And there we go, there's it finished. The brass tends to get a little bit of its yellowness back after I apply the wax, but look how lovely that looks. Gorgeous. So next we take the old masking tape off and we get the first layer of wax on it. I say that as if I apply more than one layer of wax. I only apply one layer of wax, but yeah. And so this is microcrystalline wax I use here. It's got some nice properties about it in that it's quite hard wearing for a wax. Gives a nice glossy finish and I can get loads of it, so happy days. So we'll apply that on pretty damn thick, and this goes over both the handle and the ferrule as well because it can protect metal. So we'll let that sit for a little bit and buff off the excess. Then after it's sat around for a while, take it out and then buff off to get that lovely shiny surface. Right, and there we go, there is one finished snakewood marking knife. So if you want to know this process in a little bit more detail, then I've done a full-on written post on my website in the blog section where you can see this process step by step. But if you want to buy one of these marking knives yourself, then they will hopefully be available towards the end of this month. I'm hoping to release an initial batch then and maybe a second batch a little bit later. But for the meantime, I've got quite a lot to go through before I build up enough stock to make up that first batch. And if you want to know, have all the notifications of when that is going to be available, then you need to sign up to the mailing list below. That will give you notifications when it comes available and what you can do to buy them. Patrons of $10 or above, you will get pre-access to the sale. So if you want to get one, or you want to have a higher chance of getting the one that you're really after, then you need to become a patron. But after the patrons have kind of taken most of the stock, I suppose, then whatever's left over will be available for the general public to purchase as well. Again, you need to sign up to the mailing list if you want to get information on when that will be available, because it'll be hard for me to get it out in these videos. But with that, that is the end of the daily videos. I want to thank you for your support and comments and stuff throughout this little experiment Rob and I have been running. It has been an absolute pleasure showing you the behind the scenes of how these things are made and just doing that experiment ourselves. We will be reporting our findings next week in my monthly update, and so if you want to know a little bit more about where the channel is heading after this experiment, then be sure to tune into that. But in the meantime, make sure to sign up to that mailing list if you're interested in one of these. If you want to get in the pre-sale, then you need to become a patron, and we will see you next week for that monthly update. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to press the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you then.